Hello, it's me, Offbeat Hero. And if you're watching this video, I guess you're interested in learn a little about what I've been playing lately that I've been calling Jeskai Proctor Control. I've done some deck techs and or maybe not deck techs, but deck primers in the past, and they've been in various formats. This is the first time I'm doing a video one, and I have created an accompanying slideshow or presentation to go with it. Is this modern Stiflenaught? Full disclosure, I don't really play Legacy at all. I'd like to. Legacy looks cool sometimes. Sometimes it looks less cool. I think it's cooler now that Grief is gone, but that's a whole other topic. So I did play Stiflenaught once, but it was at a friend's place before we played Cube. I borrowed someone's Stiflenaught deck, and I played it against, I think it was like Goblins or something. I don't really know. I think it was like Muxus. I can't remember. But anyway, that's kind of like my experience when it comes to Stiflenaught. It's not really the best example, but I mean, the deck is trying to cheat in a Phyrexian Dreadnought, right? It's like a 1-mana 12/12 with some text that kills it, but then you just like counter the trigger with Stifle, and then you get a big dude into play. So I mean, have we built Stiflenaught Modern? Not really. I don't really know exactly what makes Stiflenaught exactly. I don't really look into the deck, but I know the kind of core gimmick. And we're doing a very similar kind of gimmick here. So here we are, version 1.2. We had version 1, it was pretty good. We had a version 1.1 and it was not good. And now we're at version 1.2. This is where we're at with the current iteration of the old modern Jeskai Proctor Control. I'm gonna go this is more just to give an overview and for, I guess, screenshot material. I'm not gonna talk too much on this slide, but I mean, here's the exact list. We have the main board here, sideboard here, and then a little visual to show what we're working with here. This is the deck. I mean, it has it's probably got some familiar cards, so a lot of similarities with traditional Jeskai Control, which you might have seen Jeskai Energy Control, sometimes it's called. But we've also got some pretty good differences. But let's go into what's really separating us from the traditional Jeskai Control variants. So yeah, what are we doing here? You know, what's our primary game plan? Well, we got a couple of enablers in the form of Consign to Memory, Dress Down, and Strict Proctor. And we have some payoffs in the form of Flage, Null Drifter, Solitude, and Lotus Field. So this is kind of where the Stiflenaught parallel kind of comes in, is that we have basically some cards with bad and battlefield triggers. So Lotus Field, sacking 2 lands, bad. Evoking Solitude, sacrifice itself, bad. Null Drifter, we can evoke it, pay 3, but again, that also makes it die, so it is bad. And then we have Flage, which it enters, it deals 3 damage, but if you didn't escape it, it also dies, which isn't really that good. So the goal here is that through the powers of Consign to Memory, Dress Down, and Strict Proctor, we can mitigate these downsides. And when the stars align, when the combo comes together, they become much stronger than their face value looks like. So it's kind of the core of the deck. This alone won't win, and this doesn't really look like Jeskai Control. So we do have some supporting cards to try to glue the rest of the deck together and make sure that this game plan happens. So we have some supporting cards. We've got Preordain and the One Ring as our forms of card draw card selection to ensure that we can kind of get the right pieces together to pull off our tricky tricks here. We got a couple of counter spells. I mean, what control deck is complete without a couple of counter spells? So we got classic counter spell, and we're also running force negation. Kind of the 2 premier blue counter spell options currently in Modern. If you're a control deck, you're probably running both, if not at least one of these. And then finally, we got to play some removal spells. So we can't counter everything. Sometimes things get onto the board, and we got to be able to deal with them when they're already in play. This is where Wrath Disguise, the newest board wipe from MH3, comes in. And Leyline Binding, the all-star from Dominaria United from a year or 2 ago now still doing its job here of being a 1-mana cast out. which is pretty strong. But you know, a lot of these cards look pretty familiar. If I showed you just this slide, I mean, you'd believe that we were playing a control deck, regardless of what the rest of the list looks like. There's some pretty staple control cards here. But really what happened with this deck was that I became very obsessed with Consign to Memory from MH3. This is a new uncommon. So I mean, not a rare, not a mythic, just an uncommon. There seems to be every set or so, the uncommons are getting better and better, and sometimes it's the uncommons that end up having more of an impact than the big flashy rares and mythics. And I feel like Consign Memory kind of fits in that, where it's very kind of innocuous looking. It doesn't look that crazy, but it has a lot of applications. You know, it's counters a target triggered ability or colorless spell. Very simple text. You know, it's half of a stifle. Right, because stifles counter a target triggered or activated ability, so we don't get the activated ability part. That's fine. In exchange, we get to counter colorless spells straight up, and we get replicate. So we can make copies of this thing for every extra additional colorless mana we want to pump into this to counter more colorless spells, more triggered abilities. But it's also kind of the core of the deck here. It's the best of our enabler cards. We're running 4 of them, and I mean, it works really well with the kind of payoff cards I showed earlier. It works with all 4 of them. We get the old yup. It works great with these cards, right? Because Consign lets you get a Flage in the turn that you cast it for the little cost of 4 mana of a white and Jeskai. Lets you get Flage, deal 3 damage, and then counter the sacrifice unless escaped trigger. Lets you keep your little 6/6 around, which is pretty sweet. Same deal with Lotus Fields. The ETB that when it enters, sacrifice 2 lands, is also a triggered ability. So again, Consign as early as turn 2. We can go turn 1 blue source, turn 2 Lotus Field, counter the trigger, and all of a sudden we have 4 mana that we're on tap with the next turn, which is certainly a pretty powerful ramp option here. We got Null Drifter, the old, everyone's seen the evoke mechanic. Both Null Drifter and Solitude work very well in the same way. You know, where you can pay a cheaper or alternate cost for a card to evoke it, which means that when it enters, it dies immediately. So you kind of get the effect of the card without keeping the creature. But again, with Consign, you can just counter the sacrifice trigger and then keep your creature around. So we can get a 4 mana Null Drifter out, or a 1 mana throw away a white card Solitude out, and you get to keep it around without having to have it sacrificed. But you know what? It does even more. It doesn't just do good stuff for our deck. It also can't forget about the counter target counter target colorless spell. Colorless spell is just 1 mana counter colorless spell, just straight up. It hits a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of decks are playing the One Ring. You can do a little, nope. You're gonna say nope to all these cards. So the nice thing is that since it also counters triggered abilities, when it comes to the Eldrazi and their cast triggers like Summoning Microspawn, the little cost of 2 mana will both trigger the creature that they are casting and the cast trigger as well. So you actually get the full counterspell experience out of 1 card at 2 mana. But it's just as good at 1 mana for sniping opponents' One Rings, countering Karn, and even new cards like Kozilek's Command. You can just say, nope, 1 mana? I don't think so. You know, we've been countering our own triggered abilities. We've been countering our opponent's colorless spells, but can we counter our opponent's triggered abilities? You betcha, and there are some good ones in Modern right now. I'm talking Subtlety. When your opponent, sure, I've already talked about how when you evoke your own elemental, you can counter the sack trigger. Well, the ETB effect of the elementals is also a triggered ability. So Consign, you know, if your opponent tries to Subtlety your Flage or your Null Drifter, you can just go Consign the put it on the top or bottom of your library trigger, and they get zilch. A play that I've enjoyed quite a bit, playing against a few Necro Dominance decks, is the end step trigger, where they would pay life and draw a bunch of cards, also triggered abilities. So if your opponent plays Necro Dominance, expecting to draw a bunch of cards, for the low price of 1 mana, you can be actually like, nah, I don't want you to draw any cards, no cards at all, which feels a lot like a Time Walk, especially if you do it on a future turn where they skip their draw step. Then they go to their end step, try to draw more cards. You're like, actually, Consign. I'm going to say no. You know, against RWx Energy, they're playing Static Prison. Static Prison, guess what? Also a triggered ability. It enters. Stop. Stop that right now. I don't want to see that. I don't want that trigger happening. If they're trying to exile your One Ring or your Solitude or whatever else, Consign for 1 mana again says, no, I don't think so. And you know what? It even has game against the combo decks. Thassa's Oracle, everyone's favorite CDH staple. You can also say 1 mana, actually, you don't win the game. Thassa's Oracle doesn't do anything. So Consign is a very flexible card. It does a lot. It helps our deck do its thing, and it's also a pretty reasonable counterspell against a lot of stuff that's going on in Modern right now. But 4 copies isn't quite enough to make the deck, so we got to go into the second best option in our deck, Strict Proctor. Strict Proctor. This is some tech from Pioneer, from the old Patrick Wu. Patrick Wu Control. He's the one that kind of popularized Strict Proctor Lotus Field combo in Pioneer, and I thought, well, you know what? We're already on Consign. Consign helps us put Lotus Field in. What if we also play Proctor? Because, I mean, while we're countering triggered abilities, a lot of triggered abilities also happen to be triggered by things entering the battlefield, and Proctor adds an extra 2 cost on that, which generally is going to hurt the ability to resolve those triggers. But the important part here is that I don't want to resolve those triggers. I can just decline to pay, and then my bad stuff just doesn't happen. No more work required, and I still have a 1/3 flyer for 2 mana. Boom. So we're talking Null Drifter, we're talking Lotus Field. These are the 2 best combos of Strict Proctor because they are only upside. Lotus Field, you just refuse to pay, and your lands stay right where they are. Null Drifter, what's nice is that Null Drifter, the draw 2 cards is a cast trigger, unlike Mull Drifter, which is an ETB. So you always get the 2 cards, and then when it enters, you're just like, you know what? I'd love to pay 2 so that my Null Drifter dies, but actually I'm not gonna, so nice. Null Drifter Lotus Field, very nice. But Proctor isn't perfect. Solitude and Flage still work pretty well. We're gonna give him a nice with a question mark. It's mostly nice, but it's not all sunshine and daisies over here. The thing being is that Strict Proctor, yes, you can evoke your Solitude and then you can decline to pay, which will keep it around. But also the exile part, you also gotta pay 2 for, and sometimes you really need the exile part. So I mean, the Strict Proctor does help with Solitude because then it turns into the evoke into just like, you know, alternate cast, exile white card, 2 mana, keep it around, exile thing is good. But sometimes if you're tapped out, it turns off your own Solitude, but I mean, that's a pretty fine price to pay. Similar situation with Flage is that, you know, when it enters, the sacrifice that once it escaped is an ETB, so Strict Proctor does counter that, giving you a free 3 mana Flage with no extra work. But it also does stop the ETB 3 damage, the initial Lightning Helix effect of 3 damage, 3 life. Also going to have to pay 2 extra for that. So you're looking at 5 mana to, you know, have it all be upside. But, you know, sometimes turn 3, just bang, here's my 6/6 Flage, deal with it. Still a very strong play. Now, because we're a perfect deck builder, we never make any mistakes. There are a couple cards in our deck that don't work that great with Proctor. We're going to give this little question mark, because there isn't really an upside with Proctor. It's kind of just bad. The main offenders being our One Ring Protection. Gotta pay an extra 2 for that effect there, friendo. So sometimes we miss out on protection on the One Ring, but I mean, that card is still very strong. And ideally, if we're in a spot where we have Proctor out and we have to play One Ring on turn 4 with no extra mana, hopefully the protection isn't that relevant that we're missing out on it. Otherwise, you know, we can technically play around it. Usually if we're under threat by that much of an overwhelming force, we can just like chump block with Strict Proctor or something, and then we just play a ring, get protection, we're fine. Similar scenario with Leyline Binding is that, sure, you can get Domain and reduce its cost by 5 mana, but if we got Proctor, you got to pay an extra 2 to actually get the Leyline Binding effect, putting it back up to 3 mana instead of 1. So I mean, not the worst, but still a bit of a headache sometimes. It hasn't come up too often where I've been sad to see that, but you know, is something to think about when you're making your lines. We also are playing a few of the Surveil lands. The Surveil is technically an enter the battlefield trigger, which does mean that Proctor will make us pay 2 if we want to Surveil. But it also affects a whole slew of our opponent's cards. And that's kind of where Proctor really starts to shine. Yeah, we got him, baby. We got him. It's fine. You know, our deck has a little bit of problems with Proctor. Other decks have a lot of problems with Proctor. You know, when you're up against energy, whether it's red, white, or Mardu, you know, Guide of Souls, Antraptor, Bowmasters, all ETBs. You're up against Control. Subtlety, also an ETB that they got to pay 2 for. But, I mean, as we talked about Subtlety, you got to be a little bit careful with how you play those games, because they can also get the same benefit of do the Subtlety thing, pay the 2 mana, put your thing on the top of the bottom, and then keep the 3/3 for, you know, the discounted price. Proctor also very good against Amulet of Vigor, because Amulet of Vigor is an end-of-battlefield trigger to untap whatever thing they're or whatever land they're playing, probably a bounce land. So what's nice is that because since the most decks playing Amulet of Vigor are playing bounce lands, they tap for 2 mana and need 2 mana to counter the trigger. But the way that the triggers stack, they always have to pay 2 mana before they get the untap, which means that Proctor does just straight up counter Amulet of Vigor. So don't worry, as long as you're on the play and your opponent, you go turn 1 land pass and they go turn Amulet of Vigor, they pass back to you. If you play Proctor, they cannot go off with Amulet of Vigor. It turns it off, it counters every Amulet of Vigor. It doesn't matter how many copies they have. Every trigger the Amulet creates, Proctor will also create a trigger that they need to pay 2 for. Also has some funny game against Goryo's decks. You know, their main hit is Atraxa, Grand Unifier. Also a deck that plays Ephemerate. So if they're going for the aggressive early Goryo's turn, sure, they can try that. They can put Atraxa in, but they got to have the 2 extra mana or they're not looking at the top 10 cards, picking up 5 on whatever it is and getting some free value out of that. And then, yeah, my finally last little example here with Hedron Crab. I mean, you know, Landfall, also an ETB trigger. So if you're up against Mill, Strict Proctor has some very funny very funny game against Mill, where now they got to pay 2 for every one of their crab triggers, which is pretty sweet. So Proctor, yeah, it's second best because, you know, it works great with 2 of our cards, kind of okay with 2 of our cards, and then kind of bad with like 3 of our cards. But it doubles as a hate piece that just sits in play and then disrupts our opponent. Our final enabler here, Dress Down. It's the third best. It's the third best of our options. We're only playing 2, so we're playing 4 Consign, 3 Proctor, 2 Dress Down. You can see how the scale is dripping down there. You know, it's convenient that we're playing you know, best copies, worst copies in a kind of cascading amount like that, but that was more of a coincidence and it just looks nice on the slides, I guess. Bada bing, bada boom. But Dress Down for the old 1 and a blue flash enchantment. When it enters, you can draw a card. Creatures lose all abilities. And at the beginning of the end step, you got to sacrifice Dress Down, which is pretty sweet. Again, works great with Null Drifter. What's nice is that all 3 of our enabler cards work great with Null Drifter. Null Drifter loves all these cards, all these effects. Draw 2 cards, get it. Annihilator 1, 4/4 flying. Nothing goes wrong. Flage, so pretty good. Similar scenario with Strict Proctor, where if Dress Down is in play and you play a Flage, Flage doesn't die. That's the good part. The less good part is that you also don't get the 3 damage, 3 life. So no removal on your opponent's creature, no life gain, but you do get a 6/6, and then when Dress Down goes away, then you can start swinging and getting the full value of Flage. So still pretty good, not crazy. Pretty meh with Solitude. You can get a free 3/2 lifelinker in play with Dress Down, which is fine, but I mean, The important part of Solitude is the whole exile a creature part, and Dress Down also does turn that off, so Solitude's kind of eh. But the real appeal of Solitude here is that it works on literally any creature. It has so much value. Just if the opponent's creature has some bad text on it, and you want to get rid of it, Dress Down is your guy. Dress Down will come in, it'll take away all the text. We're talking no Annihilator Emrakul. We're talking about straight up killing Territorial Kavu, no chance. We're talking 3/3 Murktide Regent. Keep that Delve shit at home. I don't care about Murktides. We're talking about Primal Titan. You mean Colossal Dreadmaw? At least Dreadmaw has Trample. Dress Down at least takes away Trample. You want to go off Titan player? I don't think so. So good against creatures. Worth noting though that Dryad, Magstamine, and Harbinger of the Seas, a bunch of cheaters. Dress Down does not work in those cards. Ask your judge why. It has to do with layers. It's real bullshit, but that's just the way it is. So something to keep in mind, Dress Down, third best. Also worth noting that both Consign to Memory and Jeskai Proctor work with Lotus Field. Obviously, Dress Down does nothing with Lotus Field. So that's why it's the third best. All right, where's the energy cards? We showed the deck list. We showed you Wrath the Skies. Where's Discharge? You know? Where's Discharge? Discharge's pretty good. You know, we got some good things with Discharge. Discharge is not a bad card, I would say. You know, it's speed removal. It generates energies, you know, which can discount Wrath the Skies, or can make future discharges hit for more if you don't use it all up. It does hit creatures and planeswalkers. So, pretty good card. Not bad. However, we've already got a lot of removal here with Solitude and Flage. And it's technically worse Lightning Bolt. So if we want this effect, we could just play Lightning Bolt. The only reason we're playing it here is because it has, you know, energy support. It makes Wrath cheaper. It makes future discharges better. You know, which Lightning Bolt doesn't do. It's not like your first Lightning Bolt deals 1 damage and then your next Lightning Bolt deals 5, right? That's where Discharge kind of shines here. So Discharge is a fine card. However, you'll see we're not playing Tune the Narrative. Tune the Narrative. Instant, draw a card, get 2 energy. It's, you know, maybe this is a hot take. This is my opinion. This card is worse than Opt somehow. They somehow made it worse than Opt, and everyone's eating this shit up. Like, its only value is to make Discharge and Wrath the Skies a little better. And to me, that ain't worth it. You know, I want something better out of my cantrips than just draw a card. Give me Scry, give me Surveil, give me something. Draw a card, 2 energy, that ain't it. This card is bad. But, I mean, the Jeskai people are playing it so that you can, I don't know, super blow out your Mardu energy opponent by going turn 1 narrative, then turn 2 Wrath for 2. Which, I mean, fair, cool trick, I guess. You know, 2 mana board wipe, not bad. But is it worth playing, like, 1 mana cycle? Maybe we don't need this energy stuff to discount Wrath the Skies. We're already on a Lotus Field plan. We're already pumping out lots of mana, cheating it in. Wrath the Skies is still a very playable card by itself. Just being double white, X, blow up, you know, multiple things, very strong. I've cast this for 4 mana a lot of the time, so it's very frequently Supreme Verdict. You know, it's still counterable, but that's fine. It still destroys all my opponent's creatures, and it also scoops up any artifacts or enchantments lying around, which is pretty sick. You know, has game against Titan for just X's 1. You can clean up their Urza Sagas, their Amulet of Vigors, that whole deal. So, I mean, do we really need the discount on these energy cards to make Wrath good? I don't think so. So if we're cutting the energy cards, what do we play instead? Preordain. Wizards unbanned Preordain. Scry 2. And then you get to draw a card. We're not talking just draw a card and see what you get. We're talking look too deep and then you draw a card. Also, it's much better than Opt. It's not worse than Opt. It's much better than Opt. Sure, it's sorcery. That kind of sucks. But the important part is that it does, since our deck has some more like combo enablers, we have some synergies to work through you know 2 card combos. This allows us to assemble those combos easier by digging deeper into our deck. We can dig up to 3 cards if we need to, whether we're looking for answers or looking for the other half of like a Lotus Field Consign combo or a Proctor Null Drifter. Preordain gets us there. It also just smooths out a lot of our draws so much. So, I mean, and Preordain is just so much incredibly better than Tune the Narrative, like functionally, if you're not really invested in the whole energy plan. So, I mean, Preordain, clear choice here. Very good card. Well, if we're already off the energy package, we don't need Discharge. Why don't we just play Leyline Binding? What if we just played Leyline Binding? I mean, it does a lot of the things that Galvanic Discharge is already doing. It's in-speed removal. It hits creatures and planeswalkers. You know, it's instant speed removal, right? It's creatures and planeswalkers and more. It hits enchantments, hits artifacts, hits the One Ring. You know, the downsides, you know, because it's not all perfect. It's not all perfect, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier on the Jeskai Proctor slide. Is that you got some tension with our Jeskai Proctor a little bit of tension. It also requires a certain mana base to function. We gotta, you know, tune our mana base to do the domain thing, which, I mean, mana is pretty free in Modern these days, but domain certainly isn't technically free. It does require a little bit of work. And also, Lotus Field doesn't really contribute to Leyline Binding that much. There's some fuzzy math here about how it generates 3 mana. So is it a Triumph? Is it a Shockland? I don't know. But you know what? It's still a control deck. So we talk about the control elements of our deck here. Counterspell. It's a good all-around answer to anything. I mean, what more is there to say? It's 2 blue, counter target spell. What more do you want? It does the thing. It says no to basically any card. Can't really be a control deck without counterspell. We're also playing Force Negation. Gives us a little bit of safety net for us to tap out for our combos for the old, you know, turn 2 Consign Lotus Field, or turn 4 Consign our Null Drifter, keep it around. If our opponent tries to interact, that's fine. But on their turn, if they want to go off while we're tapped out, while we've deployed our sick combo, we have Force as the backup. And of course, we also have the One Ring. I mean, I know a lot of people hate the One Ring. There's an old version of the deck, version 1. There's videos of it on my channel as well as in my Mox field that don't play the One Ring. So I mean, this deck is still reasonable without the One Ring. But I mean, the One Ring is just insane. Play it until you can't, right? Like, just jam this card until they take it away from you, because this card is insanely stupid. We have aggro decks playing the One Ring as their top end. Like, it's just so good. Play the One Ring. Look at this control baggage. So let's talk about lands. We're gonna look at the boring lands first. Just the lands kind of make our mana base do what it needs to do. We're playing a couple basics, 2 plains and an island. So yeah, we're playing 2 plains that we can still cast Wrath of the Skies, Solitude through moon effects, whether it's Magus of the Moon, Blood Moon, or Harbinger of the Tides. 2 plains also, if there's specifically a Blood Moon effect in play. So let's escape Flage, which is nice. The deck is also base white. We have a lot of white cards, and the white cards are also our interaction pieces. So having access to Leyline Binding is really important. Wrath of the Skies, as mentioned, Solitude, good. And I feel like that we don't need the basic mountain, because we can just play through Flood Moon and Blood Moon as needed. We don't necessarily need it because our answers to those cards are in white. So as long as we have the white mana going on, we are still good to go. And blue, of course, gives us access to drawing cards still. So the mountain, I don't think is really needed at all. As I mentioned before, you know, we're on, you know, we're a white-based deck, so all our fetches are white. We of course have the 4x Flooded Strand, and the 4x Arid Mesa. We don't need to fetch the island too often. I would much rather be fetching a plains, which is why we're not playing Scalding Tarn instead of Arid Mesa. We'd much rather just play Arid Mesa. That's fine. And we're playing, you know, the double setup of 3 shocks, 3 surveils of our colors. We have an even split, keeps our options open so that in our opening plays of the game, we're almost always guaranteed, if we need it, to have a shock, to have an untapped source. Or if we don't need it, we can just go get the surveil version to get a little bit of value out of our deck. But now I get to go to the cool lands. The lands that do cool shit. They don't just tap for mana. They don't just, you know, let us cast our spells. I'm talking about Arena of Glory, the old exert, give a creature haste. has a lot of value here. We're talking about Hasty Flages or Mulch-Drifters, very strong. It does work with casting via Escape or Evoke. Those are just alternate costs, but they are still casting a creature spell. So if you evoke your Mulch-Drifter, evoke your Null Drifter and keep it around for some reason, either through Jeskai Proctor or Consign Memory, whatever, it will still have haste. So then you can swing into that Annihilator one right away. It also works if Dress Down is already in play. The way that gaining and losing abilities works is that Dress Down takes all the abilities away. But then if you give creatures new abilities, they get to keep those. So if Dress Down is already in play, you can just haste out your Flage. Like, sure, it's not going to do its Lightning Helix effect, but it will still get haste from Arena of Glory. That's pretty good. If you're lucky, because it makes 2 red mana, you can actually split it between 2 creatures. So if you're able to cast a Flage and a Null Drifter in the same turn, you can put a red into the Flage and a red into the Null Drifter, and both will have haste, which is pretty sweet. Also, it makes double red, which happens to cast Obsidian Charm off of the sideboard, which is pretty sweet. So you can have a 4/4 hasty Stone Rain Flyer guy all in one, all for the low price of 2 mana, which is pretty legit. We got Indotha Triumphs. This is our domain enabler. It's literally only here for Leyline Binding. We have no other use for it. I mean, sure, it cycles for 3, not the craziest effect, but you know, it is what it is. But it does give us our swamp and our forest to make our full domain package. What's really nice is that you can get domain by fetching for Triumph on turn 1, and then on your second turn, you can fetch for any of your blue-red duels, so Steam Vents or Thundering Falls. Either one will reduce Leyline Binding down to 1 mana, so you don't even have to like shock in Steam Vents if you are low on life. You can just put it in tapped, and Indotha Triumph will still give you the mana required to cast Leyline Binding for 1 mana, which is the line that I like. You could, in theory, swap it for Zagoth Triumph, which is the blue, black, green Triumph. So same as this one, but instead of white, you're getting blue, which does a similar thing, but then you have to shock in your white source turn 2 to have Leyline Binding up. But it does make Counterspell a little bit easier to cast, because then you can get Triumph, then next turn you can get a blue source, still have Counterspell up while still working towards your domain. Indotha Triumph does not help you cast Counterspell whatsoever. So some things to think about. I'm happy with Indotha Triumph for now. Zagoth Triumph may be a possibility. Lotus Field, we talked about it a little bit up until now, but hexproof land, enters the battlefield tapped. When it does enter, you've got to sacrifice 2 lands. It taps for 3 mana of any one color. A lot of notes here on Lotus Fields. There's some good, there's some bad. First off, I mean, it combos with Consign Memory and Jeskai Proctor, as you mentioned before. Through the right combination of cards, it can cast the One Ring on turn 3, which is pretty huge. It gives a crazy mana advantage for Wrath of the Skies, so it's going to cast X for an obscene amount, which some decks just cannot support very well. It does evoke Null Drifter and just hard cast Fortification very cleanly, because it makes 3 blue mana, which casts either of those cards. And in some scenarios, you can use the sacrifice of the lands to fill your graveyard for Flage's escape cost. Bit of a Hail Mary play, but you know, every additional option is good. Having more options is never bad. The bad side is that it is kind of clunky trying to cast Flage either half, right? Because Flage is a multicolored card. Lotus Field only makes 1 mana, so you're making triple red or triple white. So if you don't have a certain other land, we'll get into in a second here, you're going to be wasting a mana on Flage. You're going to have to tap Lotus Field and then 2 more lands. So either tap Lotus Field for red and then double white off of 2 other lands, or vice versa. And you're still going to have 1 mana from your Lotus Field hanging around, either a red or a white, which 1 red or a white doesn't really help us at all. It's not like we can funnel that into a cantrip, since we're on Preordain, which is a blue spell. So it can be kind of clunky that way. It does require certain cards to function because you basically never want to have it do the sack lands part. That is very bad. And it can ruin some of our mulligans where we have maybe 2 lands and it's Lotus Field and a non-blue source, or Lotus Field fetch, and we don't have it enabled to get it in play, and then we're kind of taking a pretty big risk by keeping that hand and hoping to find something to get into play. Because if you don't cheat it in, it's basically unplayable, right? It's also, risky, if you can't cheat it in, especially versus counterspell decks, because then if you're trying to enable, or if you're trying to rely on something to cheat it into play and it gets countered, then you're a very sad panda. That's Lotus Field, though. Finally, we got Mystic Gate, Rugged Prairie. Helps smooth the mana out. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier with Lotus Field, it works well to convert Lotus Field mana into different colors. The best combination being Rugged Prairie, Lotus Field, since with those 2 lands, you can make white, white, red, red, and escape Flage off of 2 lands, which is pretty sweet. So, functionally tapping 2 lands to escape your Flage is kind of crazy. Mystic Gate, still on the fence on it a little bit. I'm not sure how much it's needed. It does smooth over the counterspell mana, where if we do find ourselves having to fetch Indotha Triumph early, but we still want access to counterspell, maybe we don't need Leyline Binding immediately, we can at least use Mystic Gate to filter the white from the Triumph to make double blue. That has counterspell. Let's go to the sideboard. So we got a bunch of 2-ofs, we got a bunch of 1-ofs. Let's talk about the 2-ofs first. Supreme Verdict. So we got 2 verdicts in the sideboard. It's a good super versus counterspell decks. And decks you expect to bring in Sun Cleanser to counter your Wrath of the Skies. It's also useful as a sweeper against decks that cheat large things in, that casting Wrath of the Skies is not really feasible. I'm looking at you, Sign of Draco, how dare you. Verdict does clean that up. It also cleans up Murktide, also cleans up... I mean, what doesn't Verdict clean up in the modern metagame? Basically nothing. And it not being counterable is honestly pretty relevant text. I sideboard in Verdict against Dimir Murktide, which maybe sounds crazy, but it's a removal spell that they can't mess with, and sometimes you just gotta kill the frog. So, Verdict, great card. Celestial Purge is back again, kind of a mainstay of control sideboards for a long time, but it's a pretty versatile removal option. It's a 2-mana instant exile effect, and it just takes care of a black or a red permanent. Obviously, good against decks that are black or red. So let's talk about specifically what cards you're looking to snag with Purge. My big hits are Necrodominance, my opponent's Flages. Flipped Johnny is a red-white permanent, so don't forget that. It's kind of innocuous because there's no mana cost on Flipped Johnny. It does have the mana indicator in its hybrid white-red. So you can snag Flipped Johnny with Celestial Purge. It also gets Blood Moon. It also gets Psychic Frog. I mean, it's a pretty self-explanatory card. It's a pretty efficient removal, even though it is 2 mana. And it does exile a thing for good. Love you, Celestial Purge. Great job. Obsidian Charm, I mentioned a little bit earlier, I was talking about Arena Glory. It's a land destruction, and it's a threat. What more do you want? It's great against Tron. It's great against decks that put colorless lands into play. We're talking Counter Souls, Urza Saga, Cabal Coffers. Great. Teferi Time Raveler, a card that you see in the main deck of Jeskai Control decks, but it's a pretty good card against, as you expect, control decks, and also kind of mid-range strategies too sometimes. It does offer some insulation against versus some combo decks like Living In or other Cascade strategies. There's not a whole lot of synergy with the +1s. They don't really have a lot of sorcery speed, instance, or specifically sorceries that we want to be casting on our opponent's turn, which is why we don't really want to play it main deck. But even it versus mid-range decks where you don't really care about the old Hearthstone mode on it. Still very strong to just -3, bounce their thing, draw a card. Sometimes if they're playing just on curve, you can kind of skip their turn that way. Very strong effect. Surgical Extraction, it's free, it's instant speed, it hits the graveyard. Also a mainstay modern for a long time. Surgical is back again. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. However, it is very good at snagging Flages, as well as Goryo's Vengeance, shifting Woodland decks. There's a lot of decks in Modern that aren't utilizing their entire graveyard. They're trying to get one thing out of it or target one thing in the graveyard. And Surgical will, one, counter that ability for free. I mean, you pay 2 life, but it's for free. And it gets rid of all copies of that thing also for the rest of the game. So, I mean, clearly it picks up your opponent's Phlages, as mentioned. If you're up against Gorios, staying in Atraxa, very strong. If you're up against Titan and they try to do Shifting Woodland on their Titan, staying all their Titans, also very strong. Finally, we're playing 2 copies of Dranth Magistrate, which I admit is a concession to Ruby Storm. There's not really a lot of other uses for it, but Storm is a deck that needs to be respected still right now. Eventually, if Storm falls off, this will get replaced by something else. Unsure what, but it's kind of a slam against that deck, and I would be shocked if any white deck leaves home without some copies of Magistrate in their sideboard to deal with Storm specifically, because it's such a dangerous deck if you don't respect how it wins the game. Sideboard one-ofs. We got a bunch of one-ofs on our sideboard, some fun-ofs, some one-ofs. One-of being them Deafening Silence. It's a good catch-all versus combo decks. And it's really good versus Ruby Storm again. Same reasoning for our around Dranth Magistrate. Maybe we don't need this card. We can probably cut it in the future if Storm falls off, but it feels required now at least. It's also pretty good because it feels like a lot of Ruby Storm lists are on like Abrade as an interaction piece to get rid of Damping Sphere and Dranth Magistrate. So sometimes they may not be prepared for the enchantment card type. They may not have removal right away for that. Like, that should give you time to either stall the game out before they can wish something that matters, or maybe they just don't have anything on their side where they deals with, and then they just lose to Deafening Silence. So we're playing a one-of Narset. Very strong card right now because people love drawing cards in Modern. We're doing it, they're doing it, everyone's doing it. But it's a damper on the Necrodomes and the One Ring. Any other card draw effects, the effect is obvious. It also just generates value. So it's kind of perfect against those decks too, because those decks are trying to draw cards, generate value. So by shutting off their draw engine, but also being able to minus to search for more value from your own deck, very strong effect. Great card. Soul Guide Lantern. We can't rely on just Surgical to answer all of our graveyard problems for us. So we have Soul Guide Lantern. It's a nice catch-all Grave Hate that doesn't hurt our own yard. It's important for Phlage shenanigans. So it's good against opposing Phlages, right? If they've already played one, you can snag one with the ETB, and then if they play a second one, you can clean up the yard before they can escape it. But also good against Living End, good against Gorios. Also has some effect against Murktide if you can time it correctly. Since they need a critical mass of source in the graveyard to skip their Murktide delve their Murktide to get it a good size. And so if you hit them in their upkeep at the right time, it can really disrupt some of their turns. All right, let's go through some openers and some play patterns to the deck now that you're familiar with the list and what we're trying to do and what all the cards are doing. So turn 1, you're probably going to play a land. If you're not playing a land, I don't like that hand. So turn 1, play a land. In this illustration, all the lands that we'll be playing will be Flooded Strand. Of course, not every hand will be perfect. Some will be better than others. Some will have the piece you need. Some will not. Let's just go over some hypothetical scenarios where you just kind of have it all. Here's your options. So turning you want to play a land. They got a couple of options here. You can either hold up Consign to Memory if you're up against maybe Amulet Titan, or if you're on the draw against Zoo, right? You can counter their Amulet of Vigor or counter their Sign of Draco, pretty strong effect. You can also fetch Shock and play Preordain, or fetch your island and play Preordain to try and set up your next turn. But most often you'll probably have nothing to do. What's nice about Consign is that you can just wait. If your opponent does nothing, then on their end step you just get Thundering Falls or any other Surveil land, get your free Surveil, go your next turn. So what does turn 2 look like? Well, when you have your second land, you can go ahead and either play Jeskai Proctor on your turn, or you can go to your opponent's end step and play Dress Down. We'll see the effects of this in a moment here, I think. That's one option you can do. This kind of sets up a future turn on turn 2. Or you can, if you're up against a deck that you're not going to get Force Negation or Spell Pierced or whatever, you can just go a Lotus Field, assuming you fetched a blue source with your turn 1 Flooded Strand. You can play Lotus Field, trigger on the stack, use Consign to counter it, and all of a sudden you have 4 mana. Pretty strong start. I would encapsulate these turns as aggro starts. You're trying to come out of the gate fast. You're enacting your deck's game plan aggressively. This is the aggro start. This is you pushing the pressure on your opponent. It's more proactive than reactive. So yeah, you could also call this the proactive start. But not every game looks like this. Sometimes you got to play it safe. So maybe you just play another land. You hold up Counterspell. That's also a fine play. You just play another land. And when your opponent plays something scary, like a Dryad of the Elysian Grove on turn 2 or some shit, you counterspell it. Easy as that. Talked about it before. Also, on turn 1, if you, assuming you have Binding in your hand, you could have fetched your Triumph, and then turn 2, you can use your second land to get a Steam Vents, either play it or fetch it or whatever, or even get Thundering Falls. That works too. Then you can hold up Leyline Binding for 1 mana, which is great. What's nice about some of these starts is, they're pretty flexible in what you can and can't do. But this hand here is what I would call a control start. Right? This is kind of your more reactive, taking a step back, waiting for your opponent to do something before you get in the action here. So we're gonna have two. We have 4 openers here, kind of 2 more proactive starts and 2 more reactive starts here. But now we got to go into turn 3. What does turn 3 look like? Well, if we go back to our first hand here, where we did Proctor Address Down, turn 3, boom. So if you had Proctor out, if you play Proctor on turn 2, this is your chance to play Lotus Field, and again, you can just hold up Counterspell. You've assembled 5 mana for your turn 4, which is pretty sweet, while also holding up interaction for your opponent's turn 3 or turn 4, whatever, if you're on the player of the draw. Or, maybe you don't have Lotus Field. You can just play Flooded Strand, and then you can just jam a Flage or an Alldrifter. So the idea here is that on turn 2, when you have Proctor or Dress Down, either you play Proctor at sorcery speed, or you play Dress Down on your opponent's end step. Because you're playing Dress Down on your opponent's end step, it will stick around for your entire turn 3. So that's the case. You play turn 1. You play turn 1 land, turn 2 land, turn 3 land. That gives you 3 lands. Dress Down in play. That gives you free reign to jam your Flage or your Alldrifter, and that enters play. So this kind of still lines up with our aggressive start, right? We're either aggressively advancing our mana or aggressively advancing our board with Flage or an Alldrifter. If we go back to this turn 2 where we got Lotus Field, well, we're going to be on top with 4 mana, so what do we do? Well, if you have a 5th land, you can actually do the exact same thing that we set up in the previous turn. You can just jam Sorcery Speed, Strict Proctor, Dress Down, and then cast Flage, cast Alldrifter, end up in the same spot, but just with 5 mana instead of 3. You can also just cast Solitude because you have 5 mana back here. You still have 5 mana back here, so you can just cast Solitude. But what if you didn't have 5 mana? What if you had 4 mana? Well, guess what? The One Ring is 4 mana. So you can just jam the One Ring on turn 3, which is pretty strong. Or if you have another Consigned Memory, you can still cheat in Flage or Alldrifter on turn 3 with 2 lands in play and 4 mana. Actually, this slide is a little wrong. You cannot jam Flage because you can't make the right colors to consign it. So this is where the kind of mana awkwardness is. But you can do Alldrifter, so ignore this Flage part. But you can jam Alldrifter, so at least you get Alldrifter out with your second Consign here. So yeah, this kind of encapsulates the aggro starts, right? We're aggressively advancing mana, aggressively advancing board state. We are pretty much in the opponent with Annihilator 1 or a Flage Titan slamming in every turn, which is either a lot of damage or a lot of removal or both. But sometimes we're not the aggressor. Sometimes you got to do the control plan. So what else we got for the control plan? Well, both of these avenues can do a trick where on turn 3, you don't play a land drop. You have your 2 lands open, and you play Strict Proctor first. Assuming Proctor resolves, what's really nice about the way that priority in Magic works is that you immediately get priority back, and your opponent doesn't get to respond to anything once their Proctor is in play. There's no window for them to kill Proctor until you do something else. Well, one of those things you can do for free that doesn't use a stack is Lotus Field. So you can just slam those fields on the table. The trigger from Lotus Field goes on the stack, and so does the trigger from Proctor. And I mean, if your opponent wants to kill Proctor at this point, have at her. It's too late. You'll refuse to pay, and then again, you have 5 mana. Also, at this point, I mean, you can also do any of the remixes of these turn 2 aggro starts, right? So if you've done land counterspell, then you can untap. You can just play Lotus Field, consign it. That's fine. You can also go to you can pass to your opponent. Since you have maybe 2 to 3 lands, you can end step dress down and then do the dress down line. This is a really flexible start. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do from this angle as well. Not to mention that, you know, when you're treating Lotus Fields, you can also just like hold up counterspell pretty easily and do other stuff as well. So here's some play patterns you can kind of run through on your first couple turns. Let's go over some other plays that aren't specific to your opening turns, just some other lines and card interactions that work well together. So you take a Lotus Field, and you take a Rugged Prairie. Boom, that's an Escaped Flage. We've talked about this once already, but look at that. 2 lands, Escaped Flage, because you can go Lotus Field, make triple white, doesn't matter. Then you filter one of those red or white into the opposite color. So if you make triple red, then you filter 1 red into double white, then you have 2 red, 2 white, Escaped Flage. Very simple, very clean, off of 2 lands. It makes it look like you're escaping Flage for 2 mana, which is very funny. Another combo with Lotus Field that I talked about before also is you can do Lotus Field. You can, in response to the sack 2 trigger, you can float 2 mana, sacrifice those lands, and then use those lands as fuel to escape your Flage. So sometimes in certain decks, they might see Flage plus 3 cards in your graveyard and think that, oh, it'll be pretty difficult for them to get 2 more cards in without casting some spells, so I don't anticipate them being able to escape Flage next turn. This gets a free 2 cards into your graveyard without having to really spend any mana. Sure, it messes up your actual colors of mana a little bit, but sometimes the surprise Flage is pretty good. Again, this may be pretty obvious to a lot of people who are playing Magic pretty frequently, but if you haven't, Arena Glory, combined with Flage or Null Drifter, so you do the secondary ability where you have to exert Arena and make 2 red. This does give you a hasty Flage or Null Drifter. It doesn't matter if you're casting it the honest way, if you're escaping it, if you're evoking it, it will get haste. Hasty Flage, very strong. Immediately converts into 12 damage because you get the 3 from the ETB, and then you get another 3 from the attack trigger, and then you get 6 from hitting them. So you can easily just dome someone for 12 straight from the graveyard. Kind of insane. I hope I don't need to tell you why a hasty Null Drifter is good. I mean, Annihilator 1 from hand, the turn you play it, kind of crazy. There's a lot of decks that, you know, if there's an unchecked Null Drifter, they are going to lose. I mean, they cannot keep up with sack a permanent every turn unless they're in a specific board state. Let's talk about the One Ring. We'll trick with the One Ring here. So scenario, you've got the One Ring in play, but oh no, it's got 5 counters on it. It's getting pretty high, and there's already been a couple upkeeps going by. You know what that means. What if you're also at 5 life? So ring counters on 5, you're at 5 life. That ring very much about to kill you right now. But the trigger that drains your life away on your upkeep is a triggered ability. So that means that Consign can counter the damage, and then you're chilling. You get to just skip the 5 damage that turn. You're like, actually, I'm good. I'm not going to take any damage. We're just going to draw a bunch of cards. What's also nice is that you can still do this play if you have no cards in hand. You just tap in response to the ring's own trigger. So you the 5 damage trigger will sit on the stack. You'll tap, you'll add an extra counter up to 6. Draw 6 cards. At this point, the ring does start to deal you 6 damage, but hopefully in those 6 cards, you'll find a consigned memory to counter your trigger and survive onto the next turn. So I've done this play in real life. It's sick. Let's talk about Null Drifter. Null Drifter is the old tuna blue, evoke, cast trigger, draw 2 cards. But what if you don't have Dress Down or Consign? You know, you're just casting Null Drifter on a empty board. Are you just doomed to 3 cards? Or to just drawing 2 cards and then going on with your turn? Not necessarily. If you have 1 to 2 mana up to cast Consign or Dress Down, but don't have it, since the draw 2 is a cast trigger, you can draw 2 first. Maybe that draw 2 results in a Dress Down or a Consign, and then you can now you're a happy boy because you've got Consign, Dress Down. And then you can use that while Null Drifter is still in the stack to keep it around. So either Null Drifter is still in the stack, you've resolved the cast trigger, drawn 2. You can then flash in Dress Down before Null Drifter resolves, and Null Drifter will come in and not die. Or you let Null Drifter resolve, and the Evoke trigger goes on the stack, and again, Consign counters that. So, I mean, if you're empty-handed, that doesn't mean you can't sneak in a Null Drifter underneath your opponent's nose here. Now let's say your opponent plays a Magus of the Moon. Oh no, your lands, they're all mountains. All your non-basics are mountains. Whatever will you do? Well, you can play Lotus Field, and because it's a mountain, you don't have to sack any lands. This is the secret that the Magus players don't want you to know. Lotus Field, this is a mountain with Magus in play. So sometimes you can use your opponent's Magus of the Moon, or in some cases Blood Moon, to against them by sneaking into Lotus Field. You get to ignore the ETB. It's just like, yeah, I'm just a mountain. We're fine. And then, whoa, what's this? Wow, I had a basic Plains, so maybe I'll just Leyline Binding your Magus of the Moon, and now I get a free Lotus Field. Or maybe I just evoke a Solitude, exile your Magus of the Moon, and then I get my Lotus mana immediately, because it also doesn't come intact. Right? Or if I have a Plains, guess what? Flage kills Magus of the Moon. So bada bing, bada boom, right? So pretty flexible. Of course, if they play Blood Moon, you're kind of stuck on just Leyline Binding to get you there. But still a line worth considering when all your non-basics are some of their land type. You can sneak in those field, then kill their guy, and then reap the benefits of your accelerated mana. All right, time for the sideboard guide. You kind of know the deck. You know how to play it. You've done some stuff in game 1. Now it's time to move on to game 2. What are we taking in? What are we taking out? So for this next bit, I'm going to go over kind of like 5 of what I deem to be kind of the top decks right now. And then I'll cover some other decks really quickly. So first up, it's white, red, whatever energy. So sometimes it's just white, red. Sometimes it's white, red, black. But it's the energy deck. We're taking out Force Negation. We're taking out all our counter spells. We're taking out Dress Down. The reasoning is Force Negation. I mean, the energy decks are mainly creature decks. Force is probably going to see a very little value. It's going to often be clunkier than it is useful. I mean, sometimes you'll snag a Blood Moon, sometimes, but not really there. And the same idea, Counterspell. I mean, so much of the energy deck is so cheap. They're all kind of 1 mana, high value creatures. You don't really want to be spending 2 mana to counter the 1 mana play. It feels really bad. You don't need Counterspell in this matchup. The matchup kind of revolves around board wipes anyway, so just let them play their shit and then kill it all. That's the idea. You don't need Counterspell. Dress Down, not super effective against them, and sometimes there's some weird timing with Dress Down, which can give them a free Flage, right, work it against you. Dress Down maybe buys you a turn. Maybe, right? Especially since Guide of Souls, if they've already pumped something once, like the counters are just there anyway, so it's just a larger creature. Dress Down can maybe prevent some life gain, some energy gain, whatever it is. It can maybe prevent a Guide of Souls pump for 1 turn. It's just not that effective of a card in this matchup, in my opinion. So I got a lot of cards. I got 8 cards, quite a bit. What are we bringing in? Well, we're bringing in Supreme Verdict, Celestial Purge, Drannith Magistrate, and Surgical / Soulguide Lantern. I'll get to that in a second. Supreme Verdict, more board wipes are very good. As I talked about before, countering their spells, not very relevant, but just sweeping the board, very effective. especially when in game 1, you're likely to have cast a copy of Wrath of the Skies. Once they see that, they're going to want to bring in Sun Cleanser as the gotcha, because Sun Cleanser completely turns off Wrath of the Skies, invalidates that card completely. So Supreme Verdict is our kind of reverse gotcha of like, actually, we still have a board wipe, delete your stuff. Celestial Purge, again, removes a lot of the problem permanents from their deck. Of course, we can't hit their mono white creatures, which is fine. That's what Verdict is there for. But it does snag like Unstable Amulet, Blood Moon, Flip to Johnny, cleans up one Flage forever. If you're up against the Mardu version, it also can snag Reoccurring Nightmare or Bowmasters. A lot of good targets for Celestial Purge. It's just a 2-mana delete something spell. Dress Mana Straight, bit of a weird include here, but kind of what's important here is that's a 2-mana 1/3. It does gum up the board a little bit, and if you're on the play or it's a later turn, it can kind of mess up some Amped Raptor or Unstable Amulet turns, since they won't be able to cast thing off Amped Raptor, and nor will they be able to cast a thing off of Unstable Amulet. It also does buy time if they're ramping up to escape a Flage. So Draft Magic also does put a hold on that as well. Of course, not forever, so you got to be ready for that. But it does at least, put a pause on that. And finally, we got Surgical Soil Lantern. So the reason that there are both cards here and Soil Lantern's off to the side, because I mean, I've shown you one extra card here that we cannot bring in based on what we took out, unless you want to go up to 62 cards. Is that Surgical is good against the red-white version, so that you can snag out a Flage. Sometimes if you draw the second one, maybe you can snag up an Ocelot Pride or a Guide of Souls as well. That's equally as fine. Or maybe snag an Unstable Amulet or a Raptor to keep the value train from getting too out of control. But it's mostly there for Flage. The moment that they cast a Flage, it goes to the graveyard, you get to pick it up, and that kind of gets rid of a lot of their long game that they use to recover after a Supreme Verdict or a Wrath of the Skies wipe. But if you're up against Mardu, I like to go 1 Surgical, 1 Soulguide Lantern, because they're much more graveyard oriented, and Soulguide Lantern will be able to clean up the entire yard. It's a little more effective than just surgicaling one thing and then being open to whatever future creature that they decide to loop with, sorry, not Recurring Nightmare, Chthonian Nightmare. That's the new one, the energy one. Recurring Nightmare is not legal, but Chthonian Nightmare sure is. So that's the distinction there. Some additional notes about RWx Energy in the matchup. Strict Proctor, very good against these cards. Right, Amped Raptor, ETB. God of Souls, every creature entering, ETB. So they want the energy, they want the life, they got to pay 2 mana per. Stag Prison, also an ETB. So they want to remove one of your permanents, they got to pay 2. A Johnny making a cat, that's an ETB. So Strict Proctor has turned all this stuff off. However, it also lets them have a free Flage. Lets them use the same Flage thing that we're doing. So that's kind of bad. So just gotta, it's a balancing act where I think that Proctor is mostly good enough against the rest of their deck that you can risk them having a free Flage. You also have to have some removal ready and be ready for this scenario. If you do play Proctor, then they get to cheat their Flage in. So it's worth noting that all of these triggers as well can be consigned. If Static Prison is trying to snag your One Ring or your Null Drifter, you can consign that trigger to counter it. If they're top decking and you're afraid of what Amped Raptor might reveal, you can counter that trigger. Guide of Souls, if they try to pump one of their creatures, you can counter that trigger. And then a Johnny, you can either counter make it a cat, or you can also counter the flip, which is very funny. I've had games where I have cast a board wipe. I've left 1 mana open for Consign Memory. My opponent attempts to bolt their own cat token to flip a Johnny to save it from the board wipe. And then you let the bolt resolve, and then Johnny tries to flip, and you're actually like, actually Consign Memory, that's not going to flip, and then your board wipe still cleans everything up. So Consign, a lot of game against White Energy in the right board states, actually. Yeah, so here's a little arrows, hits all this stuff. All this stuff. Also worth noting that Flage, if your opponent has 7 mana and they know how the game works, you cannot surgical the Flage in the way that you want. Because again, the way that priority works is that if they stack their triggers, that they get to deal their 3 damage and then Flage dies. Flage will go to the graveyard, and then they get priority again, which they can immediately use to escape Flage and sidestep Surgical. So something to think about, or to keep in mind, that if they have the mana to play Flage, cast Flage, escape Flage in the same turn, there won't be a window for you to Surgical it. So, keep that in mind. Just to control the more traditional pile, kind of a mirror match, kind of not. What are we bringing out? Well, we don't need those board wipes, because what are we trying to clean up? Nothing. They're a pretty creature-light deck. We know this. Also, Dress Down, again, not that effective against what they're trying to do, so that comes out as well. So board wipes is control decks, traditionally bad. Actually, this kind of board wipe, since you have to pump mana to kill big things. So if we're trying to clean up Solitudes or Flages or Subtleties, it costs a lot of mana. I mean, I shouldn't have to spell this out. Wrath is bad. They have very few creatures, so Dress Down obviously loses some value there. It doesn't really do the mark here, and often Jeskai Proctor just does whatever you want Dress Down to be doing more effectively anyway, as like a more persistent effect instead of just a one-shot. So, in exchange for these 5 cards, we're going to bring in 2 Teferis, 1 Narset, 2 Surgicals. So, Teferi Time Leveler, the king of control. It turns off half their deck since they're on way more counterspells than we are. It turns off all their in-speed interaction, letting you set up your combos so that you can do the Null Differ Consign combo without having to get countered. It's probably the best mirror breaker here. Teferi is crazy in the mirror. Narset, good value piece to keep the value train running, keeping resources high. But, I mean, a lot of control decks are playing the One Ring. I say a lot, which is probably all of them, actually. But, handicapping playing One Ring is the main draw here of this card. See that little pun there? Narset, draw, Lamau, got him. Similar scenario with the energy deck. Search Distraction is just here for Flage. But they are also a pretty threat-light deck. So sometimes snagging their Solitudes or their Subtleties out of their graveyard with Surgical can also kind of mess up their game plan a little bit, since depending on how many more threats they have, they either might have a hard time finding them, or that might just be it. I've seen some control decks where their threats are literally just Subtlety Flage, and if you happen to figure that out and Surgical both of those, it's going to be very difficult for them to beat you. So, some additional notes for Jeskai Control. Again, we're talking about Jeskai Proctor. You got to watch out for these cards. So, again, Jeskai Proctor kind of does double duty here. It can be good in that if your opponent is tapped out or on 1 mana, they cannot Subtlety you, they cannot Solitude you. But if they do have 2 mana, then you're pretty sad that they get to Subtlety, counter your thing and keep their Subtlety around, or they get to go Solitude, exile your thing, and keep Solitude around. So, worth considering. But thankfully, Consign Memory is also here to save us. We talked about it before back on the Consign Memory slide, where you can still counter the Solitude exile trigger, the Subtlety top bottom trigger. You can also counter Solitude's 3 damage trigger if that matters. If it's trying to kill something of yours, you can be like, well, you know what? You can have a Flage, but I'm going to counter the damage. So, not terrible. What's also nice against counter decks when it comes to Consign is that if you have extra mana that you're not using, you might as well just replicate as many times as you have mana available that you don't feel like that can't be used on anything else. Because I mean, replicating it once basically makes it uncounterable. Replicating it twice does make it uncounterable, because who's gonna throw 3 counter spells to counter your Consign to Memory? Like, it's not gonna happen. Consign also does happen to hit Tamiyo and Snapcaster Mage. Proctor also hitting Snapcaster Mage, worth mentioning here, very, very good. But you can Consign the Tamiyo flip, so if your opponent commits to drawing a bunch of cards or to flip Tamiyo, you can counter that to keep her on the front side. Don't know how useful that play is, but options are good. And as well as Snapcaster Mage, you can counter the ETB trigger, so they don't get a flashback card, which is pretty cool. Next up, we got Dimir Murktide out. We're taking out Force Negation, taking out 2 Wrath Skies, we're leaving 1 in, and 2 Consign Memories. The reason is a lot of the action versus Dimir Murktide is going to be on our turn. Which means that we can't pitch Force to counter something. And the things they do play on their turn are going to be creatures. It's going to be Frog, it's going to be Murktide. Right? The things they play on your turn are going to be counter spells, Bowmaster, instant speed draw spells, right? Not really a lot going on there. So also a bit of an attrition matchup. You probably can't afford to be spewing resources against the deck that has a lot of ways to counter your counter all of the ways that you're supposed to get back into the game. Wrath of Skies, not the greatest here. We're going to leave one in. It just requires a lot of mana or a lot of mana investment to actually get value out of it, since their threats are usually in the form of Murktide or Subtlety. That costs way too much to kill those. It's also very easily counterable. I don't want to be pumping 4 or 5 mana to this thing just for it to get countered by a Spell Pierce or a counter spell. It really only cleans up Psychic Frogs and Orcish Bowmasters, but even then it costs 4 mana to clean up those, so not the most effective piece. We're also cutting 2 Consign Memories because there's not really a whole lot of things that we want to consign from them specifically, and it's also pretty easily counterable, and it's really risky to try to do the turn 2 Lotus Field play. Our other enablers just kind of do a better job of cheating our stuff in than relying on Consign to Memory. What are we bringing in? We're bringing in 2 Supreme Verdicts, 2 Teferis, 2 Celestial Purges. Verdict being uncounterable, really insane. It's the most important part of the text in that card. I've literally just Verdict a single Psychic Frog before because that card is insane and it needs to die ASAP. If you're lucky, you might be able to get a 2 or a 3 for 1 if they have like a Bowmasters in play or like also a Murktide in play. But often they are a deck that puts a huge threat into play and is looking to counter 1 spell to run with the game. Verdict prevents that from happening. It deals with the threat and it puts you back at parity. Very important card. Do not sleep on Supreme Verdict against a deck that doesn't go wide. This as just a 4 mana uncounterable kill 1 thing is honestly good enough. Trade Time Lever, very, very strong. Very, very strong against Murktide. They have so much counterspell, so much instant interaction that if you somehow, some way resolve this card, you're probably in a very good spot. Not to mention that the -3 is very effective against almost all of their threats. So Bouncing Frog is very good. Bouncing Murktide is very, very good. Bouncing Bowmaster is kind of good. So it just all the text on this card is insane. It might win the matchup if it ever resolves. So good card. Celestial Purge is just another very cheap removal option. We need a critical mass of removal spells because we have to be able to kill Frog after our first attempt gets countered, which is very likely true. Is that they are going to counter the first time that you try to kill Frogs. You want another shot. Purge does that. It also snags Bowmasters, which I mean we are playing the One Ring, we're playing Null Drifter, we're playing Preordain. The deck draws cards. We can't let a Bowmaster go unchecked for too long. So even though it misses Murktide, this is a necessary evil to deal with some of their other problem cards. Some additional Dimir Murktide notes. Kill the fucking frog. Holy shit, get this frog out of my face. Just make sure this thing dies, and I think the rest of the matchup isn't that bad. But if this thing starts hitting you once or twice, you've basically lost. So I would commit every resource in my power to kill this stupid frog. It's way too good. It's absolutely insane. Kill the frog. Ruby Storm. We're taking out Wrath of Skies. We're taking out Jeskai Proctor. Generally, they're going to try to win off of maybe 1, maybe 2 permanents in the form of Ral / Ruby Ruby Medallion, and you're just better off snagging them with single target removal. That's cheaper. I mean, 4 mana for Wrath of Skies to clean up a single Ral, not that great, or a single Medallion, not that great. Also, it could catch some of our important sideboard cards in the collateral damage, which I'll get to in a second. Wrath, just not it for this matchup because I mean the hits are just so few. We'll take out 3 Jeskai Proctor because I mean they really don't care about it, so we can just cut this card and let the rest of our deck do its thing. And also it's a turn 2 play that we can't really afford to tap out to play this 1/3, so it's probably gonna be a dead card till later turns anyway. It's just not really worth it. What are we bringing in? We're bringing in 2 Giant Magistrates, 1 Deafening Silence, 1 Celestial Lantern, 2 Celestial Purge. So Magistrate is the absolute slam dunk. It is the nuts against Ruby Storm. The deck cannot function with this card in play. All of their card draw effects are in the form of Play from Exile, which Transmagistrate says, no thank you. A lot of this matchup will probably turn into Play Magistrate, then Protect Magistrate, because if they cannot get rid of it, they cannot win. And their general form of removal is going to be probably a Braid, but the deck might evolve in a way that lets them kill Magistrate in other ways, but keep this card alive. Deafening Silence basically is good as Trance Magistrate. It limits both you and your opponent to 1 non-creature spell per turn, which is nice because outside of specifically Dress Down, actually no, even Dress Down, like all of our kind of combos are a creature non-creature spell. So this doesn't actually mess up any of our ways to cheat Inflate or cheat Null Drifter. But it sure does mess up their deck. They, again, can't really go off by playing 1 card per turn. I mean, they are a Storm deck. They need to cast multiple cards per turn. What's also nice is that Deafening Silence sometimes hits a blind spot in the Ruby Storm decks where they're expecting things like Damping Sphere and Magistrate as the hate pieces. And so if you play an enchantment removal not really the most common in red. They might have to splash for green or white to deal with an enchantment. And it comes out on turn 1, which is, I mean, very, very strong. Sluggoth Lantern, solid card, not going to win the game by itself. It will force them to play around it. Otherwise, they cannot really go off with Past in Flames very effectively. So just a nice little stall tool, but will not win the game by itself. I have lost Ruby Storm many times from them just comboing off without even using the graveyard. So, I mean, there's a chance that Sluggoth Lantern doesn't do anything, but it's still, I think, worth bringing in for the use case that they do have the Past in Flames kill. And then finally, Celestial Purge. It's just efficient removal that does take care of Ral. Sometimes it can be clunky, you know, if they have the Ruby instead of Ral, but it's still better than Jeskai Proctor, so Purge comes in. It's great. Some more notes about Ruby Storm. Let's talk about Consign to Memory. Again, this card is pretty good here. Let's look at Grape Shot. Did you know that Storm, the actual Storm mechanic, is a triggered ability? Consign to Memory counters the Storm trigger. So when they try to Grape Shot you, sometimes you can get them by just consigning the Storm trigger, and then they might just lose, and then they might just lose there. I don't know. This hasn't come up in a game yet, but if it does, I mean, I want to do it. It sounds sweet. Some Ruby Storm lists also play Thassa's Oracle as a win con, where they turn through their entire deck and they just Manamorphose to double blue and get Oracle. But guess what? Oracle's also a trigger, so Consign also says no to that. And then if they're on the Oracle kill and they don't have a way to redo the Oracle, that's GG, because they should have basically no cards in their deck. I don't know how they win, even if they had 1 or 2 cards in their deck. So, Consign Memory has actually some surprising text. Also, Dress Down also turns off Oracle. Nice fun little trick there if they try to go for the Oracle kill. Also, don't forget that Consign Memory just counters Ruby Medallion for 1 mana. Definitely worth it too if you're on the draw to just play a fetch land or play an untapped blue source, just hold up Consign to counter Ruben down if that's their cost reducer of the turn. So pretty effective. Let's talk about Through the Breach. Through the Breach. This deck is somehow made a comeback. I did not expect this, but here we are with Through the Breach. We're taking out Wrath of Skies, we're taking out 2 Proctors. So again, they're not really a deck that goes wide, and the things they put in play are going to cost too much for Wrath to kill, so not really a reasonable card. Proctor doesn't really disrupt their cards at all, outside of maybe sometimes Ugin's Labyrinth, which is neat, because the imprint trigger is a trigger that Trick Proctor sees, so they'll pay an extra 2 to imprint a card in their Labyrinth to get 2 mana. So I mean, it's something, but it's not really enough to be in on Proctor, and our other cards are a lot more effective. So what are we bringing in? We are bringing in Obsidian Charma, 2 of those. We're bringing in 1 Narset, and we're bringing in 2 Teferi Time Ravelers. So Charma, I mean, it's a 2 mana card that comes in cheap. They play a lot of colorless lands, actually. And it's a threat that will kill them eventually. So, I mean, it does all the things we want it to do. Delaying them back a land is important to keep them off of Breach. Great card, especially if you can cast for 2, maybe 3 mana. Narset is good. It does a baseline thing of digging for answers to deal with the combo, but Breach is also a ring deck. So we want to be able to hamper them drawing a bunch of cards to prevent them from comboing a first time, or even if we combo or solve the combo once. Sometimes the ring will help them dig into the combo the second time to do it again. Narset prevents that scenario from happening. We're also going to bring it to Fairy, not maybe for the reasons you expect, but things like bouncing their talisman is pretty good. And just having the option to prevent interaction on their combo turns or on our turns is a pretty powerful effect. So we're going to bring in some Teferis because they're at least better than Jeskai Proctor. Here's some more notes about Through the Breach. Again, we're talking about Consign to Memory. I mean, look, this is why I built the deck. Consign to Memory is insane. This card is so sweet. It has so many gameplay applications. Technically, I mean, depending on the game state and how often you fetched and shocked, maybe you don't want to shock too much against Through the Breach, and you probably shouldn't have to shock too much against Through the Breach. So you have a pretty high life total, but generally, when they breach Emrakul or Ulamog, it's the Annihilator trigger that kills you, not the 15 some odd damage. So what's nice is that Annihilator is a trigger. So I mean, it's not, you of course don't want the game to get to this state, but if you have to, you can use Consign to counter the Annihilator trigger and keep all your permanents. Dress Down also works very well by A, removing the Annihilator trigger altogether. You still take your big boatload of damage, but even better, what's nice is that if you cast it after they've Through the Breached, so at the beginning of combat, before they've declared their attackers, if you flash and Dress Down, it will suck away the haste from Ulamog or Emrakul, and then it'll just sit there until their end step where they die. So pretty effective card there. I would love to just hold up 2 mana the whole game against it Through the Breach, and I'd be like, yeah, that resolves, and then just flash and Dress Down and have them skip their turn more or less. Also, I don't know if this is a good play or not, but technically you can Consign to Memory the Ugin's Labyrinth trigger as well. It makes you trade a card to put them onto 1 mana instead of 2. Probably worth it. I haven't made this play myself, but something to think about. Proctor doing the same thing as Ugin's Labyrinth. They got to pay 2 if they want to get the imprint. We talked about it before. More useful game 1 than game 2 due to our sideboard plan, but it's something. It's something. Also, I mean, Solitude and Leyline Binding, effective tools against Emrakul and Ulamog. They just answer it before they actually swing with their big creature. Something nice to mention about Solitude is that because Ulamog has the ward sacrifice 2 permanents, Solitude can be one of your permanents. So you can just, Solitude picking up Ulamog is more like sacrifice 1 permanent, which is, still bad, but not crippling. Here's a sideboard guide Speedrun for some of those other decks out there. There's all the variants. Take out your Wraths, put in your land destruction, put in your Ring Hate. Amulet Titan, take out Force, take out 1 Wrath, because it needs some Wraths to clean up amulets. Just rip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, you don't need to take out all your preordains. I changed my mind on my sideboard options here. But yeah, so Amulet Titan, take out your Force Negations. They're probably not that useful. You don't need all your Wraths. Take out all your preordains. You don't need those. Actually, I do remember what the other card's supposed to be. There's supposed to be Supreme Verdict here. So you put in 2 Charmoss to blow up their lands because they're important. Narset again answers the ring. Titan is on shifting woodland now, so Surgical answers that problem, and then Verdict actually kills shit if they happen to go off. Domain Zoo! So you take out 2 Wraths, leave one Wrath in. Take out 2 Forces, because they're not really that kind of deck, and you take out 1 Solitude, because they usually have Hexproof anyway. You want to jam 2 Verdicts, 2 Purges, because they pick up Leyline of the Guild Pact, as well as anything they have in play if they don't have Sign of Draco, which is pretty sweet. And then Surgical, because sometimes they play Flage. Goryo's Reanimator. Take out your board wipes, put in your graveyard 8. 2 Surgicals, 2 Thorax Lanterns. Call it a day. Just delete their graveyard. Don't let them reanimate anything. That's the game plan. Merfolk, take out 2 forces, put in 2 verdicts. I mean, just wipe the board. Why are you canceling non-creature spells? Just kill them. Black Necro, Proctor doesn't do shit. Rip Grief. Grief doesn't do anything to you now, so just jam 2 Purges and 1 Narset to stop their Necro dominance in their rings, and call it a day. Yawgmoth, take out 2 forces, 3 Strict Proctors, and 1 Consign. They just don't really do a lot against that deck. Jam in 2 Purges. I mean, that exiles Yawgmoth as well as most other important permanents. Put in some Surgicals so that if something dies, you can just yoink it out. Solar Lantern, again, Graveyard Hate, fine. And then Narset does actually mess up Yawgmoth a little bit if they have the combo but don't have the full combo in hand, if they're hoping to draw into it. Narset says, oh, you gotta wait a turn, actually. You gotta kill Narset before you can go off fully. And then we got Living End. You want to trade your Wrath of Skies for those verdicts. You got to take out those bindings, take out those dress downs. All these interactive cards don't do shit against Living End. So we put in our hard board wipes, put in Magistrate to stop the Cascade. Solar Lantern messes up the graveyard. Don't need Surgical because they're kind of a critical mass graveyard deck. And then jam some Teferis in because I don't know how they beat that card anymore. They have to play like Sink to the Stupor or some shit. Congratulations, you're an expert now on Jeskai Proctor Control. You've made it to the end of the video, but not really. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. This is kind of the main deck primer portion of it. And I am so glad that you have been here with me during this time. Do not look at the YouTube progress bar. There's certainly nothing left after this. We'll just have a moment of silence for all the people who want to leave the video now. They can do so. Okay, that's enough. We got a post-credit scene. Let's talk about the Adventures Initiative. This is kind of an opportunity for me to ramble about some of the stuff about the deck that isn't specifically kind of primer related. If you're not looking to learn how to, this is kind of some more in-depth background stuff about the deck, some things I'm thinking about for the future, because it's, constantly, Magic is a constantly evolving game. No deck is ever complete. So I'll talk about some things that are on my mind still that are outside of this completed kind of package. Why even play this over traditional Jeskai Control? Well, the number one reason is it's fun. I mean, who doesn't want to put in a Null Drifter into play? That's sweet. Who doesn't want to cheat in Flage? That's awesome. Well, who doesn't want to play Strict Proctor and then slam those field down? That's great. It's a fun deck. Why does anybody play anything? Because it's fun. I like that you can play both a fast game or a slow game in the play patterns slide a couple slides back. We went through how it can have a bit of an aggressive start that by turn 3 you can start cheating things in. It can have a bit of a slow start where you just hold up counter spells and ley lines and you're just chilling. It's an extremely flexible deck to play and it rewards things outside of the box. I mean, we saw in the kind of in-depth sideboard guide all the weird applications of Consign to memory. It really makes you think and rethink about the game and what is and what can and cannot be countered. I had a really fun game one time where my opponent used Felia to flicker one of their creatures. And then on the end step, they wanted to bring it back, wanted to bring back their White Orchid Phantom or something, and I consigned that trigger, which was really cool. It was just like, sweet, I used your Felia to turn my Consign to memory into just better Swords to Plowshares, which is kind of sick. Also, no one can call you a filthy net decker because you're playing some cool list that isn't just regular Jeskai Control. I mean, if they find this video, then maybe they can call you a filthy net decker anyway. I understand the irony of me putting out a primer for a deck for people to play that is from the internet. But, I mean, I give you a stamp of approval that you're not a filthy net decker because you're copying a cool brew, a cool guy brew. Also, you get to be not like other girls, which is, I mean, kind of the most important thing when it comes to playing Magic. Who wants to be like the other girls? Just be, you get to be an individual, a unique person, someone cool and hip and whatever. So, I mean, that's pretty great. Also, you get to play main deck hate pieces that help you hinder your opponents, that help you and hinder opponents. Sorry, there's also another typo there. Did not proofread this very well. Which is pretty sweet. You get to play Proctor and your opponent's pulling your hair. They're like, oh man, Proctor, my ETBs don't work. And you're like, hee hee, here's my Flage, here's my Null Drifter, having so much fun, right? Great time. It was good to just like do dress down stuff where you're like, oh, your creature has no abilities? That sucks. Here's mine with no ability. It's a Flage. Like, pretty awesome. I just want to talk about a little bit because I'm not completely sold on the Strict Proctor Lotus field combo here, because I mean, we know that it does work against opposing decks, and it helps our deck a little bit, but how much does it really help? We talked a little bit about how Flage and Lotus Field don't really play very well together because you can't really get the mana cleanly out of it. You're usually wasting a mana if you're trying to cast Flage, Lotus Field. Also, Jeskai Proctor messes up Leyline Binding, messes up the One Ring with the protection cast trigger. So I mean, is this worth it? I don't know. Something that we're still thinking about. 'Cause, I mean, we're not really fully abusing the Lotus Field mana either. Like, we're getting a mana advantage, but how much of a mana advantage are we really getting? Like, is this deck building constraint? You know, are we getting the full benefit out of what we're doing here? So we can take some notes from Pioneer. I mean, they're playing Teferi, Hero Dominaria, and Memory Deluge. Teferi plays very well Lotus Field because I mean you get to the +1 untapped Lotus Field plus another land, which does make me, you know, I keep thinking about Cryptic Command. Cryptic Command's 4 mana. It's triple blue. Lotus Field makes triple blue. Teferi with Lotus Field untapped 4 mana. Like I mean, there's a combo here, right? And also Lotus Field pumping a lot of mana makes Memory Deluge, especially the flashback, very easy to cast. So like, does the deck need a little bit of retooling to go into Cryptic Command, Memory Deluge, Teferi? Maybe. Does it feel dumb to play Teferi when you can just play the Ring? Possibly. Does it sound kind of dumb to play Memory Deluge when you can play the Ring? Most certainly. Is Cryptic Command even still a playable card? I don't know. This is something I've been on my mind. We're going to explore it. I'm still kind of fleshing it out. If you play this deck, give me your opinion on how you feel about the Proctor Lotus Field combo, because what's interesting is that we don't necessarily have to cut the whole thing. We can cut just Lotus Field and keep Proctor in and still have that synergy going. But of course, if we cut Proctor, we can't play Lotus Field. I don't believe that hinging off of just Consign Memory to keep Lotus Field in play is a viable strategy. Like, you got to play, you know, more than 4 copies to get Lotus Field in play. So that's kind of the thoughts on Proctor, Proctor Lotus Field. Is this combo actually doing what we need to do in this deck? I also want to talk about some other cards on my mind. The first two being Kozilek's Return and Ugin's Binding. So Kozilek's Return, the OG, I've already seen it showing up in some sideboards for some decks. It's a 3 mana, deal 2 damage each creature. Instant speed board wipe. So that's actually what's the difference between the two cards is that Kozilek's Return is pretty on rate, actually, it feels like. It feels like if you're on a 3 mana board wipe in red, the sorcery speed ones deal 3 damage. So trading 1 damage for instant speed definitely makes a lot of sense. But why bring these cards up? Specifically because of Null Drifter. So the interesting combination with Null Drifter here is that Evoking is still technically casting an Eldrazi creature spell with converted mana cost 7 or greater. So that does mean that an Evoked Null Drifter will let you do the like flashback effect on both Kozilek's Return and Ugin's Binding. So Kozilek's Return, I mean, definitely looks a little better than Ugin's Binding, where the initial cast is, or the front side, as I'll call it, the just deal 2 damage to each creature, very reasonable. Sure, it's no Pyroclasm, that's fine. You know, it's cause a extra 1, but if we then later cast a Null Drifter, we get a free, absolutely free 5 damage to each creature, which is kind of insane. Very, very powerful effect. And then its parallel card, this Ugin's Binding that we got in Modern Horizons 3, its front half is just a like Brazen Borrower effect, right? We've seen it's 3 mana, return on permanent you don't control its owner's hand. So it's literally the Petty Theft from Brazen Borrower. But the thing about Petty Theft is that it's 2 mana, and then you get a 3 mana 3/1 flyer with some of the text on it that, you know, comes packaged with it. Ugin's Binding does have the flashback effect, just like Kozilek's Return. And it's a Cyclonic Rift. Now, Cyclonic, so I feel like these two cards are a bit on a spectrum where the two halves of Kozilek's Return are closer together, and the two halves of Ugin's Binding are farther away. So what I mean by this is that the front half of Kozilek's Return is better than the front half of Ugin's Binding, But the back half of Ugin's Binding is better than the back half of Kozilek's Return. Because, I mean, just bouncing everything is basically a board wipe outside of specific scenarios. And this is and these are cards that we can utilize. We can use these cards. But the issue is that can the deck afford to, play a 3-mana bouncier permanent? Because that's pretty bad rate, right? We've seen this effect at much cheaper. But that does mean that the next Eldritch Recast bounces all of our opponent's non-land permanents, which is very, very strong, very effective. Picks up creatures, picks up leyline bindings, picks up rings, all sorts of stuff, just sends it all back. Planeswalkers as well, get them out of here. Pretty cool. I do want to explore this eventually. I don't know where. I feel like that if I was to play either of these effects or a combination, right? I could play like maybe 2 Kozilek's Return, 1 Binding, and then we have to get rid of Wrath Disguise. But Wrath is an insane card. Wrath is so strong. And the issue is that I feel like both these cards would be better if I had some sort of discard effect to get them in the graveyard sooner. Like, sure, we have Surveil Land, so that's not really a reliable way to get this effect to do what we want it to do. But if we can find a way to get in the graveyard for free or through some sort of looting effect, then it makes them a lot better. So something to think about. Something I've been thinking about in relation more to Lotus Field itself, because we just talked about if the mana is worth it and if we can really leverage that mana, are some of these other big mana cards. Shark Typhoon is played in the Pioneer Lotus Fields deck. Of course, I'm talking about Pioneer Lotus Field Control, not the combo version. We're also not really a deck that plays a lot of expensive non-creature spells. We play expensive creature spells, so is Typhoon that good? I mean, we can certainly cycle it and make 1 big shark. That's not bad. Nexus of Fate, great card. It's 7 mana. We can easily get to 7 mana with a couple Lotus Fields, right? Extra turns are great, and shuffling into the deck is awesome. However, I think this card still only has a foil printing, so unless they come with a non-foil printing, I think we're kind of screwed for competitive play, but that's what that is. Lore Revealed also interests me because it is a card that we can also very easily cast off of a Lotus Field. And 2 more lands. But it either takes up spots in our main board or it makes our mana a little bit iffy. So, if I was already kind of on the fence on Mystic Gate, the blue-white filter land. So there's a world where we replace that with a Lore Revealed. Mana gets a little more sketchy because now we have a kind of like half a land, right? We have to go that we have to have a second land that we island cycle with to make Lore Revealed work. But in the games where we don't need the extra land, having a effectively 3 mana draw 3, right? Because Lotus Field plus 2 lands, quote unquote 3 mana, fuzzy math there, is a pretty effective card. So something worth it. Also, Archmage's Charm, pretty cool. It's a counterspell. It also draws 2 cards and it does the cool 1 mana permanent steal thing. That also is completely castable off of Lotus Fields. The mana requirements otherwise are pretty steep for Charm without field, since we are a 3-color deck that wants to generate double white and double red, and now we add a triple blue card, so it might be a little bit too much lunch. But some thoughts about Lotus Field there. But thank you so much for watching. This is the actual end of the video. As a reward for making it past the post-credit scene, here's a bunch of pictures of my cat. Aren't they so cute? If you liked this content, make sure to give me a comment or give me a like and subscribe or whatever on my channel or on my Twitch. And if you have any questions or suggestions or thoughts or ideas about this deck, please let me know. I'd love to chat with you about it either in the YouTube comments or on Twitter or wherever else and see where you're at with where I'm at on this deck. That is all for this video. So glad you came to show up, and I haven't said this tagline in a while, but follow me, but more importantly, follow your dreams, follow your deck building dreams, just like Cutie Oscar follows his dreams here. Look at this cutie patootie. But this is Offbeat Hero signing off, and I will see you out at the LGSs and at the Magic Fests and on the internet. So farewell and take care. Bye-bye.